Welcome to another video, guys. So we've got another teaser from GGG here, a unique Viridian jewel, Ancestral Vision. Now this jewel on first glance looks pretty good. It's +8 to dexterity, and it's got a special modifier here, which reads, modifiers to chance to suppress spell damage also apply to chance to avoid elemental ailments, 50% of their value. First, looking at this jewel, it's a pretty good jewel. I think most builds that are going to be using spell suppression are going to want to get this jewel because, you know, most builds want to get 100% chance to avoid elemental ailments anyway, because that's just a great stat to have in current Path of Exile. Elemental ailments are so dangerous. The common cause for dying is you get hit by an attack. That attack shocks you. You take massive amounts of damage, then you just die. Maybe you get hit by a huge ignite, or you get frozen, etc, etc. So those things are really dangerous, and if you're already using spell suppress, any spell suppress build goes for 100% spell suppress, so on most builds this is going to be a modifier, a jewel that just grants 50% chance to avoid elemental ailments. You know, it's going to be around that mark there. Some builds might overcap slightly by accident, a couple of percent, so it's going to be around 50% chance to avoid elemental ailments. That's a pretty good jewel. I just want to point out, somebody asked in the comments on the Twitter post to confirm that this jewel will stack to gain 100% avoid elemental ailments, and it hasn't actually been answered by GGG, but just based on the wording of this jewel, I would say that it's very, very unlikely that this jewel stacks, because it just grants a modifier that applies 50% of the value of spell suppress to avoid ailments, so it won't stack. It's not actually giving you 50% chance to avoid elemental ailments, it's just giving you that modifier in particular. So gaining 2 of the same modifier isn't going to give you multiple instances of the avoid ailment chance. Now, just before I go into some details for like synergies and things like that with this jewel, I just wanted to do a quick mention of the names and the flavor text for both of the uniques that have been teased so far. So yesterday we had the Stormseeker unique gloves. The name doesn't really suggest anything in particular, but it does when you get the little bit of flavor text at the bottom here. The flavor text says, a KARUI settlement within the far reaches of the Atlas was devastated by lightning sparked by tempests at the hands of their storm god Valako. So we know that Valako is a god of the KARUI, or a god that the KARUI worship, I should say. Potential kind of spoilerish for what the whole league is going to be about, what the lore of the league is going to be. I think if you just had these gloves isolated, you could just say, you know, that's just a flavor text like anything. But if we then look at the unique that's been teased, Ancestral Vision Viridian Jewel, well, first of all, it's once again based on the KARUI because it's ancestral. We've got the little jewel icon, which looks similar to like the totems that you fight in Act 4, those sort of like KARUI totems in Calm Stream. The flavor text here, the spirits of our ancestors guided us from the Apalago to the continent. Inextricably, the purity of our souls is linked to the ones who came before us. So once again, more KARUI flavor text there. And I think maybe this thing that we've seen with like the big forgeman or whatever it is for the Crucible teaser, maybe it's some kind of like forge god or something like that for the KARUI. Could be something interesting going on there. The flavor text on the gloves in particular I think is really interesting, that a KARUI settlement within the far reaches of the Atlas. Is that suggesting that the KARUI maybe found the Atlas before we did and they moved it into the Atlas and started a settlement somewhere else? That's kind of interesting. I mean, we're getting close to the time now where sort of lore and things might be pointing towards the direction of what we're going to be doing in PoE 2. So just a note there, pretty interesting stuff. I'm not hugely into the lore, so I don't know exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to lore, but just an observation there. So back to this jewel and some synergies. Some immediate synergies that I thought of was with the Raider. I mean, the Raider is just insane with this jewel. Quartz Infusion grants you 40% spell suppress, and then the node that comes right after Quartz Infusion, Avatar of the Veil, grants you 50% chance to avoid elemental ailments. So just by taking both of those notables, you'll immediately have 70% chance to avoid elemental ailments, and then you can just easily cap spell suppression from gear or from the tree, and you'll have your full ailment avoidance and full spell suppress cap. So that's pretty nice synergy there with Raider. I mean, obviously with Raider, you can already cap Spell Suppress and Ailment Avoidance very easily, but it's nice to get it in a single duel, so that's pretty nice. There is also the Magebane Keystone that grants chance to suppress spell damage per 15 evasion. This keystone is typically used to kind of cap the last bit of spell suppression that you need on builds that have an average amount of dexterity, but there's definitely a use case there for dexterity stackers, which is not a very common build, but if you do have a dexterity stacker, you could gain a lot more benefit out of this keystone if you had the duel, because you're just going to suddenly gain a huge amount of chance to avoid elemental ailments just from having a lot of dexterity on top of the spell suppress as well. So that's a pretty nice synergy there. And lastly, there's a special mention here for the Elivor helmet and a cluster jewel notable elegant form. Both of these give you chance to suppress spell damage and chance to avoid elemental ailments, so they kind of get a bit of extra value there. Elivor is already a great helmet for a spell suppression based life mapper, so if you're life based, not energy shield based, it's really good for mapping. It's very, very sustainable. And obviously the cluster jewel notable is pretty easy to roll as well on those spell suppress jewels. So both of those get a bit of extra value from this new unique Viridian jewel. And yeah, overall this is a very, very powerful jewel. It's a very good jewel. My guess would be that it's going to be quite rare. It might be something to do with the League mechanic, like it might be an exclusive drop from the League mechanic, or it could just be, as I mentioned with the gloves yesterday, you know, it could be another just core drop pool unique that's being added. So that's it. I hope you guys are excited for the reveal for Crucible League later. I'm Dreamcore, and as always, stay tuned and stay safe.